Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Chris Marhefka, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing outstanding, Michael.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you on today. We're going to be talking about your work, transformational coaching. And one of the things I love about transformational coaches in general is that they had to go on a journey themselves. And some people are afraid to go on that journey because change can feel so comfortable. And so today we're going to be diving into not only your story, your journey, but how people can dive into theirs as well. So if you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Yeah, thank you so much. Right off the bat, I fully understand that fear because I was deep in fear for most of my life. I got into transformational coaching through my own personal journey. I went from overstressed, overwhelmed, in an unhappy marriage. My health was declining in my 30s to where I am today. Happy, overjoyed, fulfilled in my work. I absolutely love what I do. I am a transformational coach. I've also been an entrepreneur for 16 years, and I get all of my fulfillment out of serving people and helping them. I know these tools work, these methodologies work, and I just love sharing them with people. Also a lifelong learner. I'm constantly learning new things, new skills, reading all the time. And I just love processing, condensing, and sharing it in a really simple way that helps people.
And we all have to be lifelong learners. It's the only way to thrive, especially in a changing or an ever-changing landscape of what the world is. I saw an article, I didn't read it because it was more clickbait, I think, than anything. It was like within 24 months, these are the jobs that are not going to be here anymore because of AI. And I was like, that's interesting. I'm curious about what the jobs are. And then I said, you know what? I like it. Like, it's not going to affect me.
Yeah.
Whatever I do, I'm just going to make sure I do it, and I'm going to be successful in it. But then again, that fear mongering of like, am I going to have a job? Am I going to have some security later on in life? It's something that people think about. And I can only imagine people, especially in corporate jobs, 9 to 5s, where they find themselves unhappy, anxious, maybe with their health declining, and they're just doing it to get a paycheck at the end of the day to provide for the family. And I can just imagine how much stress that would be, especially if you do read the article and you're like, wow, my job is on that list. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thinking in their mind, do I have to change? Do I have to transition? Do I have to go on a different path than what I am right now? And so my question is, when people are feeling this anxiety in their life, where they are unhappy, where they see that their health is declining, where they see all this fear in the world maybe pointed at them into some fashion in some way, how can they navigate through that to be more positive and to maybe look at it in a way of finding fulfillment later on?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I first start by recognizing how true it is that we live in a world where there's more distractions, more fear, more things to be concerned and worried about than ever before. And maybe that was the reality always, but it's now everywhere. It's on every screen you look at. It's on every pop-up. Every time you scroll, it's there. And so I really think that a big part of human development over the next 10 years is learning the skill of separating from all the things that trigger us and separating from the things that get us off of our center into these states of anxiety. So it's not just about learning the tools to manage your anxiety. I think that's really helpful. Honestly, things like the breath and getting outside in nature and learning how to down regulate your system is so important. But I think what's equally important is learning to see in your life, what are these things that are causing me to feel this way? And sometimes it can be so normalized because just the way that many people have been living for a long time, myself included, I lived my whole adult life upregulated, smashing caffeine like as much as I could get in just to keep going. And yeah, fortunately, that led to a massive injury and life change for me. And I don't think I would have changed otherwise. And so first off, I fully get it. I understand it. I was there. And as far as working their way out of that, the First, the easiest way to break that cycle is to completely disconnect. And what I mean by that is in a very short term, like you can do this in an hour. Like you can go for a walk in the woods, and it's surprising what that'll do. Like go out camping for a weekend, go on a retreat, whatever it may be, and disconnect from the phone, disconnect from the news, and people will be very surprised what their state will be at the end of that. And so with all my clients, I work in like disconnection time, and it can be simply just taking 5-minute breaks between your meeting to not be on a screen, to not be stimulated. But all those things, they seem so simple that most people don't do them, but they work so well. The other thing I'm incredibly passionate about and trained in is working with the breath. And, early when I got into it, I was into all the sexy breath work, like the really hard, really intense stuff. And it was fun. It was loud. And what I really teach today is using the breath to calm the system, using the breath to down regulate, learning to breathe deeply into your belly, which the higher you breathe, so if you're breathing all up here in your shoulders and your neck, that's the same place your energy is going to be. Your nervous system is going to be way out of regulated. So learning how to breathe lower in your body. So I teach a very simple 3-part breath, breathing into your belly, breathing into your sternum, then breathing into your chest, and then reversing it on the way down on the exhale. And that in itself, it's like the silliest, oldest parenting wisdom, but it's like, take 10 breaths. And somehow so simple that no one does it. And it can go a really, really long way.
I have a 3-year-old, and sometimes when he's just having a tantrum or a fit, I go, slow down, take a breath. All right, breathe. And then he's like, okay. And he's trying to get, like grab his breaths, and he does, and he calms down. Now, I'm not sure if he realizes that, okay, these breaths are helpful to me and I should do it more often when I'm having a tantrum. It's sometimes you have to be reminded, even if you have all of the wisdoms and all of the knowledges, sometimes we just have to be reminded of things that are beneficial to us. It could be walking out into the forest and disconnecting, as you said. Some people won't do it even though they know it could be beneficial to them. Maybe someone has gone camping in their life and they realize how amazing it was, and then they got so jam-packed with family and obligations like work, and before you know it, you find that your schedule is filled up with things that you consider a priority because they are providing for you, but then again, they're not providing helpful things to you, a peace of mind. They're not giving you, like a mindset that is powerful and maybe optimistic. Because what happens in our world today is we immediately go to the negative. Our minds are naturally wired to be negative. And so if we can have some negative in our life, people are hungry for it. I'm not sure if you realize, like drama shows and drama TV is all negative.
Yeah.
And people, they give them that drama, or they give themselves that negativity in the sense of entertainment, because they think they're just being entertained, but they don't realize that their mind is being hardwired to just, hey, like this fear is something, like is regular. So when you feel anxious and things and stress like that, you're like, well, this feels kind of normal because I'm just inundated by so much of it every single day. But if you gave away that fear, if you gave away that natural instinct to allow yourself to be inclined to negative and start to be more positive. I'm not saying to be Mother Teresa and go out and smile all the time. I'm just saying to understand where your mind is going. And sometimes what happens is people, they pass on their happiness to someone else. This happens a lot in marriages, where someone might say, well, I'm not happy because my partner is not making me happy or something like that. And they might misconstrue what they do as love versus what the other person might do. So I'm working all of these hours. I'm meeting with all of these clients. I'm doing all of this. And what are you doing for me? And so the love language could be different. And so the mindsets between people can be very different when we're looking at transformation. And sometimes what happens in change in life, some people, they grow together, some people, they grow apart. And so one of the things I'm sure my audience is going to be interested in is, I'm afraid to grow because if I change, would I be able to look at the people around me the same? Because I'm now at a higher level. Should I regard them to say, hey, you should rise to my level? Otherwise, it's just not going to work into the relationship that I'm trying to build, because environment is a factor in someone's success. So, what would you say about someone who's trying to change, doing the work to change, but the people around them are not changing?
Yeah, you are the product of the 5 people that are closest to you. And sometimes for some people, those 5 closest people are people that are negative, are dragging them down, are belittling, and they just really don't serve you anymore. And so one of the things that oftentimes happens is that as you start growing, call it like you growing and them not growing, the ways in which you relate to them will change. And what I found to be really like positively surprising was that when I didn't allow myself to fall back into my old Chris being, when I was with like friends that I thought, I actually started relating to them at a completely new and deeper level. It was like when I showed up as my authentic self, the ones that were really for that and they were excited about my growth, they met me there. And they were curious and they would ask questions. And the ones that didn't, there was some growing apart that happened. And I really resisted this for a long time. But when I really thought about it, is like, are any of us the same people as when we were in preschool? Would it be weird to have the same friends as we had in kindergarten forever? And I think it's like a cool idea, but in practical reality, we're constantly always changing. Every moment we have cells turning over in our body, and when you get really intentional about your growth and you're growing towards what you believe is best for you, it's a non-negotiable to have people around you that also want that same thing. And that can be really hard. And oftentimes there's in all transformation, there's like a whole cycle that happens. There's a process. And when someone goes into a period of transformation, it can feel like chaos. It can feel very unsettling, like the rug's been pulled out from underneath your feet and you're in a washing machine. It can feel wild. And so I always say, like, not making life decisions while you're in the middle in the process of transformation. That includes the people you spend time with. Now, you may need some space from them as you're in your process, but honestly, we don't usually have clarity when we're in transformation. Once we get to the end of the cycle, we usually have this new way of looking at the world and ourselves and others. And from that place, you can be a lot more grounded in how you talk to people. But one thing that's funny enough is like, as soon as someone goes into a process of transformation, one of the first things is they think they know all the answers. They think they have the truth now. They think they know the way. And then they get tossed around a few times. And so in that time, it's not really the time to like judge other people for their path and what they're doing. And usually when you complete a cycle of transformation, it also comes with more understanding, more compassion, more kindness for others. And so that's the place you want to make decisions from and who you spend your time with.
I remember I used to be an avid hiker when I lived in Connecticut. We have some wonderful trails. The weather is nice for hiking. Even in the snow, it's not too bad. And I would just go hiking every Saturday with my dog, and we would just go hike for, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, and just kind of get lost. And I got really good at not getting lost, and it was enjoyable. And during the hike, I remember how I thought versus when I got in the car, because on the hike, I was thinking about all my problems. I was like, okay, I gotta grade some papers. I gotta do this. The kids are not doing the right thing in school. I was a teacher at the time, and I'm just thinking of all the things I have to fix. And then I started to trip on the path, and then I started to stumble because I wasn't paying attention. And then so I said, okay, let me focus a little bit more on where I am right now. I'm in the forest. Okay, there's roots everywhere. The road's uneven. There's rocks, and I got to make sure my dog is not going to attack anyone, even though she was a very friendly lab. I just had to make sure. So I was like, okay, I have a lot on my plate right now. Let me focus on that. And so I started to see the trees. I started to feel everything. I started to make every step meaningful, especially in the snow, because if you take a wrong step, you're going down deep. And sometimes on the mountains where I would go hike, the snow would be anywhere between, 5 and sometimes 6 feet at its highest. And it's because it's just so high up. And I had snowshoes and I had all the gear, so it wasn't hard to hike. But I do remember one time I went hiking without my snowshoes and it was treacherous. I mean, it was like, just stepping and like all the way, like going down to like past my knee. And I'm 6'4", and I'm like, this is tough. So I'm over here just trudging away. And eventually I make it out and I said, I need to prepare better. And
Mhm.
so when I started to prepare, I said, okay, let me get the gear, let me focus. And my hiking experience became more enjoyable as I became more focused on it rather than just, hey, let me go, do something. Let me go out for a walk. The walk became meaningful for me. And if we transition that mindset into life, sometimes we're not paying attention because we're so distracted by everything else that's going on. We're not paying attention to our steps. We're not looking at our clients. We're not looking at our business. We're not looking at our family because we're only looking at the problems. We're only looking at maybe at the things that we have to do that are going to be on our to-do list. And though those things are important, I'm sure, there's time and a place for it. And so my question to you is, how can someone prioritize what's important to them? And how can they begin to implement systems or strategies where they can say, let me do the things that are going to be the most meaningful for me right now, that are going to bring fulfillment later on in my life?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. I mean, right there, you tapped into probably one of the secrets of real happiness and real fulfillment in is the idea of being present in the moment, like right here and right now. And one of the things that actually ironically gets us there is when we're in physical danger. That's like the study of flow state. And so, like, you're using that to your advantage, but we don't need to be like locked in for that to happen. We can just choose to be present in this moment. And I find that the more moments that I'm present in, the happier I am, the more I can enjoy whatever this thing is that I'm doing, whether I'm podcasting or if I'm playing with my daughter or walking alone in the forest. And on the contrary, the more time our minds are in the past or in the future, the more unhappy those people are going to be, because those two things, you can never, ever have control over them. The past has already happened and you cannot control it. You can learn from it, but you can't change it. And the future hasn't occurred yet. And so it's good to think about where you're heading and set the direction and vision of your life, but you can't live in the future because you'll stumble over the roots, like you were talking about on your hike. You'll stumble and you'll trip and fall today in this moment. And oftentimes it also leads to simply just a lack of satisfaction in one's life, because if you're always looking at the future, you're casting that you're not good enough today because you're not where you want to be in the future. And so the more time we can spend fully being present, and that means like locking into whatever you're doing, whether you're whether you're taking out the garbage or you're driving your car, just being present adds a whole nother level of enjoyment to that activity. And what I find, it's like when I do that, it almost seems like I can control time. Like there's activities that will stretch out and be like, wow, only 5 minutes passed, but like I felt like I've been in this moment for an hour in a good way, like really enjoying every second of it. And I really think that that is such a key that can unlock the door to anyone's happiness, no matter what, is to just see every moment as an opportunity to be fully there. And this gets to the priority question, because when you start doing that, it's very easy to recognize when you're doing things that you don't want to do, that aren't important to you. Easy to blast through things that you don't like when you're unconscious and you're just checked out. That's easy to do. We kind of go in these robot modes. But when you start being present, you start realizing, like, I don't actually want to be in this meeting. I don't want to be talking to this person the way that they're talking. Like, I don't want to be doing this thing, going on this trip. And that gives you like a very clear scoreboard of your life. It gives you this like snapshot of where you're at. And presence is like immediately shows you how many of your moments you're actually choosing and how many of them are getting chosen for you. And when you start to see that, you can start to make real changes. And that's where priority comes in. If it's not a full yes, it's a no. And that means if I can't fully love being in this moment, if I can't be a full yes to it, if I can't be fully here, then I'm a no to it. And of course, there's like human things and there's commitments and there's responsibilities that we have to dance with. That's the human experience. But at the end of the day, we have a lot more control than a lot of people give themselves credit in how you design your life. But it takes being present to recognize that. And presence is where you get a clear signal of what's important to you and what's not.
One of the things I love to do is I love to talk to older people that have a lot of wisdom under their belt and life under their belts. 'Cause sometimes you can see only so far, and you could have a strong mindset and you could be a good parent, for example. I'll use parenting as an example. I think it's a really good example where you can have had a bad childhood and then you say, I'm going to make sure my child doesn't have the childhood that I had. Right. So you're you're
Mhm.
more present, you're doing all the things that a dad or mom should do. And somewhere you find yourself overbearing. You're a helicopter parent. And is that enjoyable to you? Maybe, but for most people, it's a challenge because they feel like they can't let off the gas, right? Because now that child is dependent on that parent because all of the battles that that child could have fought haven't, they haven't fought them. So they have to either one day experience that pain of winning or defeat, or you have to keep on fighting those fights for them. And so I think of a parent who is on both sides of the coin, one who is super into their kid's life and one who is super not into their kid's life. Where the parent, as I said, that's into their life is doing everything for them, right? You need a dress, I'll make it for you. You want to do this? Okay, we'll make it happen. You need someone to be, on the field trip, I'm coming. So you have that parent. And then you have a parent who's just like, hey, I can't go. I have a meeting. Nope, I'm going to be traveling away on business. So you have two different experiences. And in that moment, it's a choice, right, for that parent to make saying, okay, I'm going to be here for my child or I'm not going to be here for my child. And that child, I'm sure, is going to have a different perspective on how they view things later on in life because I'm sure both parents are being present to some extent. But when you start to look at the future or maybe just someone else's past, you can see things a little bit more clearly. So when I'm talking to these older gentlemen and ladies and I'm saying, hey, like tell me about, raising your kids and how you are with your grandkids. And they go, spend as much time as you can with them. And I say, okay, and I'm like, that's difficult. I'm very busy. But they're like, just spend as much time as you can with them. You're not going to regret it. And then they would even go on to say, one day they're not going to want to spend time with you. So then you're like, okay, well, now's my time. And so you have this conflict of interest. It's like you have these little beings that you love, and the little beings can be anything. Also, it could be your job. You could love your job. You can love travel, and you can love a lot of things. But then again, you're like, okay, is this a time state for me? So meaning, am I only going to be able to do this for a period of time? Because by the time they're teenagers, they're going to not want to hang out with dad anymore or mom anymore because we're not cool, right? They want to hang out with their peers and their friends. And I understand. I did the same thing. But I appreciate the time that I spent with my mom and my dad and my grandmas because to this day now, once I got over all the maturing and all the hormones and everything, I start to see them as family. And it wasn't about the money they spent on me. It wasn't about all the hours they spent at work. It was just the times that they did spend with me, whether it be a lot of time or a little bit of time. Those are the times I think about the most. And so I look at with my kids and I go, how can I be present? And so it's being there with them, helping them with their homework, just doing stuff that's random, like cleaning the garage. And it might not seem like a big deal, but for them, it's the biggest of deals because that's their world. And so we have two worlds intermingling right now. We have the parent world and we have the child's world, our children's world. And to understand the difference between the two can get in the way of someone's transformation because a child can also feel like an anchor, an obligation, a responsibility. So there's parents out there today who feel capped. They feel like they can't spread their wings and fly. They feel as if they do too much, they're going to miss out on these opportunities, which is the moment with their children. And so, how can we help parents today understand that this feeling that they're feeling could be natural, or it could be a moment, like it could be a seasonal thing, or it could be maybe the best things that they could be feeling in their life.
So great. I just became a new father, actually. My daughter is a year and 9 months. So I get this
Congratulations.
firsthand. Yeah, both my wife and I went through versions of this ourselves. And I really believe that becoming a mother or father is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, initiation that we go through as adults. And like all initiations, if we resist it happening, it's suffering. If we resist the reality of what is happening, we will suffer. And that's why I see a lot of parents suffering. And don't get me wrong, it's hard, but hard doesn't always need to translate to suffering. And the thing I've noticed about children is just like elderly. If we see whether it's a baby or a child or the elderly as a burden, that's exactly what they're going to be to us. But if we see them as a gift, full of wisdom, because they both have very unique wisdom. The elderly have a full life lived and experience, and a child has innocence and purity. And the way they see the world is just through complete awe and delight. And so both of those have an enormous amount of wisdom. But I think culturally, and for a lot of people, they're seeing them as weights that just need to be carried, like you're carrying a weighted backpack. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's still a choice to see them that way. And when you start shifting your perspective to what can they actually do for me versus what can I do for them? I say it all the time. It's like I can get into my work hole and I can kind of like put the head down and just become this robot. But as soon as my daughter laughs and she comes over and she hugs me and she wants to play, like I light up with joy. Like that is such a gift that I would not have in my life if she wasn't bouncing around the house and yelling and whatever. And yeah, and so I think it does require this perspective shift. And when we do that, similar to presence, when you choose to fully be there and you choose to fully experience children, you recognize how precious life is. You recognize how precious every moment is. And there are seasons to life that we don't get back. And having your child, and especially at a young age, is a season that you will never, ever get back. And when you miss a season, you don't get the gifts of it. You don't get the lessons of it. And a lot of people are plowing through the seasons of their life with their head down. And that's why when you ask a lot of elderly people and people that are nearing their deathbed, those are the things that they talk about spending more time with your loved ones, spending time with your children when you can, essentially telling you to appreciate the season you're in. And going back to like one of the first things we talked about when it comes to like time, and we're all busy and we all have life going on, what becoming a father showed me very clearly is how much time I wasted. And I thought I was conscious. I thought I was dialed in, but it seeps out in all these different ways. And so when there's now constraints, like I'm watching her for this time to this time, and then I'm taking care of mom from this. And so my day gets squeezed. What I would normally take 8 hours to do, I now have 2 hours or 1 hour to do. And so every moment becomes more precious, which means we get to be more conscious about how we spend that moment. And so the waste gets thrown out and you realize that you don't miss it at all. And that was my experience. Is I was so afraid to miss out on all these things that I thought were bringing so much happiness and joy to my life. But then when they were gone and they was replaced by this other way of being, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close.
I think of, just the aspects of the seasons that you were talking about. I think that's a wonderful way to look at transformation and how we're living life mostly. People, they will come in with their New Year's resolutions and they'll kind of breeze through the year. And before they know it, it's Christmas already. Like, you know, where did a year go? And it was, the year didn't go anywhere. It's just that you didn't pay attention. And you didn't give yourself the opportunity to want to pay attention because we are so busy. And of course, we can slow down, but for how long do we slow down? Do you do it for a week? Do you do it for a month? And then are you back in your old habits? This is something you have to understand what type of person you are and what season of life that you're currently in. Because when I was a teenager, I was filled with ego, terrible. It wasn't a good ego. It was a bad ego, and it wasn't helpful. And so I matured in my 20s, and everything got better. And then started working on personal development later on in my 20s. And then my mindset now in my 30s is very different than it was in my teens, and it's very different than it was in my 20s. And I know it's going to be very different in my 40s and my 50s and my 60s. And that's the process of evolution. That's the process of me understanding that I'm going through different seasons of life. But then again, some people, they can get stuck on a season. They can look at a season of life that was really good for them, because maybe the season that you're currently in is not that great. And you're like, well, I remember the last season, it was even better. I wish I can go back to that. And what happens is that you think that maybe the next season can't be better because you're just looking at the past. What I would say to those individuals is that if you want a better season, you have to make it happen. You have to be that person to say, hey, I want to put in the effort for this next season to be the best season possible. We're not worried about the weather. We're not worried about if it's going to snow too much, it's going to rain too much, it's going to be too hot. It doesn't matter, right? You are going to be the person that is the proponent of whatever happens. Because if you live in Texas, you might say this Texas weather is great. But if you live in California, you come to Texas, it's going to be a transition for you to say, hey, I got to get used to this weather. It's very different. But I find that in life, when you're doing those transitions, when you're going from one stage to the next or one season to the next, there's going to be fear present. And I think of a caterpillar, for example. I haven't talked to one, but if you think of a caterpillar, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go into this cocoon for an extended period of time. It's going to be dark and it's going to be lonely. You don't know if you're going to make it out because anything could come and eat you or squish you. The hope is that one day you can break free from that cocoon and be a butterfly and fly and experience life. But then again, that moment of beauty, you had to go into a moment of darkness, a moment of fear, moment of uncertainty. And sometimes that's going to be the journey that you're on. And right now, you could be in a moment of uncertainty. You could be in a moment of fear, but it doesn't mean that you can't do the work or do the process to build that cocoon that's going to help you evolve and help you transform. But this is something that you have to want for yourself. A caterpillar doesn't just wake up all of a sudden and is in the cocoon. It had to put the silk around his body, right? It had to be intentional. And so we have to be intentional toward our change too. It might not be easy. It might be hard. And as I said, it might be filled with uncertainty, but you have to want it for yourself. But then again, you don't have to do it by yourself, right? We have so many wonderful people in the world that are there to help you, that are there to say, hey, I can be on your side. I can be on your team. I could be one of your five. And so one of the things we have to look at is when you're looking for a coach, when you're looking for someone to help with that transformation of your life or in your life, find someone who's going to, resonate with you and who's going to not only challenge you, but then to also be that support, especially in the moments of fear and the moments of doubt and the moments of uncertainty. Those moments right there can be make or break, right? And they have a saying, they say, in the moment when you're afraid to jump, that's when it's the most important to jump. And so right now, you might be afraid to change. You might be at ends meet with work and finances. But I encourage you to jump. I encourage you to say, today can be that change in my life. And so as we begin to wrap up, Chris, I would love for you to give us some final words, some final thoughts, and then please tell everyone how they can find you, reach out to you, and begin working with you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thanks for sharing so much wisdom, man. It's so true. And the moment before everyone has clarity is we're always unclear before clarity happens. And so I've learned that leaning into discomfort, taking the leap and going towards fear actually yields the best results, because if we run away from it, it's still there. And so the easiest, fastest, the analogy that people use is the buffalo. The buffalo, when it feels a storm coming, it goes into the storm. It marches into the storm because it knows that's the fastest way through it. And our life is the same way. I always say life is going to life is going to throw you things. And unfortunately, we can't, and maybe unfortunately or fortunately, we can't be the ostrich and just bury our head in the sand. And it doesn't actually work. When it pulls its head out, the same dangers are there. Life is there. And the same thing goes with us. Just because we want to pretend like needing to go into that cocoon, it's that need won't go away just because we don't want it to happen. And for a lot of people, there's an analogy that have been using this for like 10 years. And I say the universe calls to us for change in increasing intensity. And I use the analogy of the feather, the brick, and the Mack truck. And usually these signs come so subtle and so gentle, as if a feather just brushed off your hair. And most people are just so head down that they don't even notice the sign. They don't even notice this is a signal for change or doing something different. So they just keep walking on the path, they keep on their way. And then a brick comes out of nowhere and hits you right square in the chest. And these are the moments in your life where you say something like, wow, I really need to make a change. I need to look at that. I really should do something about that. And if we're smart, we do that. And we listen to those signs and we receive them and we honor them and we give them the season that they need to work through us. However, a lot of people, myself included in my early years, and this is what led to my stress-induced brain injury, like was the catapult for my growth. I just kept on going. I was getting multiple bricks in the chest. Relationship, finances, business, health, like bricks in the chest, left and right. Bruised up, bloody, and I just kept going on the path that I was on. I refused to listen to the signs that were being shown loud and clear. And then you're walking along on this metaphorical path, crossing a little crosswalk, and then a semi-Mack truck just runs you over. And that's the moment when you can no longer not pay attention, because you're up in the hospital and now you've got months or years of recovery. And my advice is, don't wait for the Mack truck. Don't wait for the sign you can't ignore. Look around you. And if your life, your health, your relationships, your finances aren't how you desire, it's time for a change. And allow yourself to listen to the more subtle and subtler signs, because we actually can grow without pain. But us silly humans, we love to get the pain first to force us to change. But you don't have to. And so the more I learn that, the less I go into the suffering pain teacher. And the more I just listen, like, okay, that's something I need to pay attention to, and I do it. And I would just encourage all the listeners just to take like an honest inventory of their life. And any place, it could be big or small. I remember a really funny thing. I'm going to give it. Is it okay if I side tangent story here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. When I was when I was, I'll call it calling in, manifesting my current wife, I had a list of 100 things. Actually, I meditated on it and I visualized like, who is this woman? And I was really certain and desiring to like have this partner for life. In my early years, I did relationship the ego way and the hard way, and got divorced. And so I learned a lot of lessons in that path. And I was calling her in, and I remember taking a look at that list, and I went through it, and I went through all the ways I was not that person, and all the ways I was out of integrity. I'll use an example. Like I wanted my partner to be musical and fill our house with beautiful music and play instruments. And I'm like, wait, I don't play any instruments. So I started taking guitar lessons, and I wanted someone who was well-traveled and spoke more than one language. I was like, wait, I don't speak anything but English. And so I started taking Spanish lessons. And so these were just examples of small things where my life was out of integrity with what I actually wanted my life to be. but I hadn't taken steps to get there. And guess what? As soon as I started cleaning up all those things, she appeared, and the rest is history.
And where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. ChrisMarhefka.com. It's just my name spelled out. Is the best way to find everything that I do.
All right, perfect. And I have some other links. I'm going to throw them down below
Thank
so
you.
people can choose what they are or choose the route they're going to go to reach you, because you could be that figurative Mack truck for people. You can say,
Mhm.
listen, I'm going to be that hard moment for you, that realization that's going to jolt you awake without the hospital bills and without the injury. And I think that's important, because if I even look back at my life and all the bricks that were thrown at me because I didn't really feel the feathers, it was like,
Mhm.
whatever. But the bricks, I mean, I probably have enough to build a mansion.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many listeners can definitely be with me in that regard, because yeah, sure, it doesn't feel nice to get hit with a brick, and I'm sure you don't want to get hit by a Mack truck. It's even worse. But sometimes you get used to the pain. Sometimes you get used to, just feeling down and out. But that feeling, it doesn't have to be your life. Yeah, sure, it could be a season, right? Like, you got hit by a bunch of bricks. It was a bad day at the construction site. But guess what? You, you can make a change, right? You can say, you know what, no more, right? I'm going to put a hard hat on. I'm going to dig deep. I'm going to put my steel toe boots on, and I'm going to get to work. And sometimes to transform, to change, it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of deliberate things that you have to do. And one of the best ways I have found to transform is to get a coach. And I'm sure that reaching out to Chris, he's going to be a valuable asset in your corner. It's important that you have someone with you on this journey, because you're going to get blindsided one day by that Mack truck. But if you have someone to say, hey, don't cross yet, let's pay attention, you're going to get so much further in life with all of the goodnesses and not all of the hurdles that we love so much as humans, as you said. Because yeah, sure, at some point in your life, you want to experience the ups and downs, and more downs probably than ups. But then you get wise and you start to pay attention. You seek mentors, you seek guides, you seek people who can bring you to someplace a lot sooner, because our time is limited. So let's not waste time looking for the right moments. Let's not waste time trying to be present. Let's just dive right in, right? Let's get acclimated to the pool. You can take a step in at a time, or you could be the person that jumps into the deep end. Now, if you don't know how to swim, I hope Chris, do you know how to swim?
Oh yeah.
All right, so Chris can hop in and save you, and I'm sure he's going to do the same thing in your life. I do want to thank you, Chris, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.